Hello, everyone. Ikaiden here. Today we're doing the synopsis for Lion Song Episode 3 Derivation. We open on the Vienna Central Station to a trio of friends admitting their non sober state and have been in that form for hours because they're saying goodbye to their friend Theodore. When Theodore finally makes it on his way to the train, or onto the train, he makes it into the cabin finally with the two other gentlemen that we see in the early parts of the episode 1 and episode 2. Here we are, where we're going to see him joining. There we go, yeah. And he's fast asleep, so he doesn't conversate with the other two gentlemen. But the episode 1 is the one that was saying goodbye to the parents, and the episode 2 is where he was saying goodbye to his lady friend. But he's fast asleep. We meet our main character for this episode, Emma Regnazek, as she attempts to consult the local mathematician Zoller, the head of the Radius Society of Mathematicians, to discuss her new theory and a correspondence that she had sent ahead of time. What ends up happening is that she gets turned away at the end because Zoller feigns ignorance. And in the process of getting her turned away, Zoller speaks disparagingly that mathematics is unsuitable for women due to their brains being domestic and not logical. And when Emma speaks that, when she's introducing herself, she says, "I am a mathematician like you," he scoffs at the notion that a woman mathematician like me. So this is the process that she goes through time and time again at her apartment, where she goes through this breakthrough, or she receives a notion that helps her develop the theory that she's working, the theory of change. And but she's troubled by the non-help that she got from the radius, and she's troubled by the way she was treated, basically, that a woman like her, and she was treated like a secondary person, a secondary citizen, basically, because she just wasn't helped. And so this is how she kind of goes through and deals with the process. So Emma receives a box, delivery of a box, and what's in that box is very pivotal to the story, because it's important to the time period, because this story and the entire episodes that we play through happens in the early 20th century, and tuberculosis is a thing that we're all aware of, and her father passes away um, from tuberculosis, and in that box is his belongings that was on him, on his person. And she goes through the process of reading the letter, hearing what his last few days was like, and goes through and hears what his last wishes were. Kind of like his last wishes, and so she goes through and ends up reading the letter and is on the floor in the end in tears, and left blaming her father for believing in her when no one else would. Especially, and this is moments after leaving the radius, where she was spoken to differently because she was a woman. But she was raised by a father who believed in her and, treated her and gave her respect. And we see her on the ground here, and not necessarily blaming her father, but her father told her, that she could be more. But then in the world, we're in a time where women are considered less than men. On her way to the market, Emma walks past a men's tailor shop or a men's clothier shop. Forgive me, the translation on Google Translate is I might have gotten it wrong. But the window in the window, she realizes that the father's clothes that was in the box was left to her, and in a world where men are treated differently than women and just given kind of this innate respect, she says the clothes is given to me and given to her. And so we see her now where she decides to dress as a man to see what kind of headway she can get just by dressing as a man. And so Emma, now dressed as Emile Shell, goes back to consult the radius to discuss her new theory. And immediately she notices the difference. Getting there, we see the mater, that's what she's get called, is just she's immediately waved in. That can waved in allows her into the back. As before, she was just everything. She wasn't allowed to go into the back at all without some kind of circumstance, and you can't go here. You're not allowed to go into the back, and now she's just allowed to go wait in the back room with no one else there. Since Emile was allowed to wait in the back room, they notice that they are ahead of the rest of the radius. So they notice that there is a problem of the week on the board. And so Emile goes to solve the problem of the week, hoping it would serve as a calling cards of sorts. After that, or while solving it, the radius comes in and, in short, accepts Emile to the radius. After the introductions and everything, Emile goes home wondering if all of this dressing as Emile and everything is going to be worth it. Throughout the episode, we see Emma return to the library multiple times as a place where she not only works, but can continue to flesh out her theory while she's working. Depending on your conversation choices, the timing you show up, and your interactions, the encounters and revelations that you make while there may be different while you're in the library. In my playthroughs, I clicked through many different times and found the same things happen, but different sometimes. And while the same things happen, sometimes different things happen. I know that sounds confusing, but we see here that she's getting a revelation, and it's dependent on your choices. And then I said in episode 1 synopsis, it's dependent on your choices, and it's very, instead of me breaking down this scene, I wanted to just kind of break down how the library section kind of works. So this is a game where, even though it feels like it's a simple game, the different conversation choices you make now, you'll see the effects happen towards the end of the game, or towards the end of the episode. So this is a scene again that you've seen already once before, that once Emma gets a breakthrough, she will come back to her apartment and kind of jot down the breakthrough to help to flesh out on the blackboard what her theory is going to be. So instead of me just breaking down every scene of this, I'm just going to give you how her process works. She uses the library and her apartment as a way to flesh out the theories. So here Emile returns back to the radius, and while at the radius, Zoller receives notice from the waiter. We'll just say the waiter, and he leaves immediately without saying too much. And before doing too many interactions, Nenner, the one on the left, Professor Nenner, and Emil leave the room to go and have a conversation. We see Emil solving the problem of the week to kind of prove themselves how effective they are at mathematics. But as I was mentioning, Professor Nenner, and Emil will leave to go and have a conversation out in the cafe. For those who played through episode 2, this scene will look familiar because right next to them and to the table to the left is the painter. And this scene is where Professor Nenner and Emil have a conversation about Zoller's sister is suffering from tuberculosis, and where Emil tells Professor Nenner that that their father died of tuberculosis, and that Nenner kind of tells Emil a little bit about all of the Radius members, and then tells Emil about Zoller. And this is basically just a way to get the painter into the story and to connect the story. And the painter, in short, invites Emil back to the workshop to be painted. Days later, and another visit to the Radius, Emil gains another breakthrough, this time thanks to the bickering of their peers, while trying to solve the problem of the week. While another of Emil's mathematicians, Professor Nenner, as we mentioned before, invites them to speak to his class. Nenner explains that he was unable to help while reviewing Emil's theory, and so the theory was handed over to Zoller. A few more days have passed, and between Emma and Emil, they gain a few more breakthroughs, and by the time they head to the Radius again, though this time, by this visit, Zoller has found out that Emil is Emma, and that their theory is in the field of his study, and he has vowed to protect his family's name to his sick sister. In this visit, we see Zoller show up with a chip on his shoulder and all but says he knows Emil is a woman. But instead of handling it behind closed doors, he all but is out to humiliate them. Zoller challenges Emil to a debate at the university in front of the mathematics faculty, in the main lecture hall, and the students of the Vienna University. We see Emma showing up for the debate, and you, as the player, now have to make a series of choices based within the decisions you made earlier in the episode. This will dictate the progress of the debate. In some playthroughs, you can get the Radius members to speak in your defense. Sometimes the students will defend either Zoller or Emma. Sometimes Zoller can be seen as disproving the theory, and sometimes the theory is proven. When it's over, if you prove the theory, you can choose to humiliate Zoller, or you can treat him respectfully. Days after the debate, Emil shows Zoller where their change began, and the theory of change began to grow. In my playthrough, Zoller thanks Professor Resnizek for not ridiculing him and asks if they can be relied on to postulate theories of mathematics. Emil goes on to crack a few math puns as the duo walks away, and this episode comes to a close. Thank you for joining us for the synopsis of episode 3. I look forward to you joining us for episode 4 and the synopsis of Closure, the final episode.